Welcome into another episode of Betting the Pitch. I'm your host, the real underscore G Warner, and it is late night Europa League best bet time. Going to go through Europa League and whatever I can speak about in the Conference League. On this late night edition, it's a long week with all the college basketball going on in the world. But it's been a really nice Champions League week so far. I think I'm undefeated and trying to keep that going as long as possible. As normal, going to go through both of the leagues. Usually I put that on the Champions League podcast as well, but I felt like with second legs, it's a little bit more interesting to go through in depth. And I think that worked out. And hopefully any of you who followed along were able to make the same selections and got some extra money in your account. For this episode, I'm going to go through Europa League a little bit more in depth than the Conference League because I know a lot more about those teams. This has been a great competition to me so far, so I'm pretty interested in trying to stick along with it. Please ignore my eyes. I think it's allergy season, but trying to deal with that as well. Maybe it's late night. Who knows? And like always, going to go through and give an ultimate best bet end of show, plus try to give you some, some insights to potentially make some money. And as always, all lines quoted in this podcast are courtesy of betonline.ag, my favorite place to get my bets down early. Reduced juices offered in almost every game you want to bet right up until game time. Please follow the link found in the podcast description to fund your account. Use the promo code GW50 to receive a 50% match bonus up to $1,000. Also wanted to announce that I just started a Patreon account. I'm trying to work through the ins and outs of technology of learning a new platform, but my plan is to try to record there each night my leans for the upcoming day. It is not going to be in place of, for instance, what I've been doing on pregame. I try to get my picks out there overnight. Have to get mine up for tonight as well, but that will happen after this podcast. Do have a college basketball pick already in there, but figured it'd be a nice way to combine all my thoughts because I can't really do hour-long podcasts every night. The idea would behind this Patreon account is the $20 monthly subscription, far cheaper than what you'd be paying at pregame.com for my picks every night, and be getting it every day as opposed to having to wait for the few times I do a podcast each week, which doesn't feel like a few right now, but we're going while the getting's good and trying to get as much out there as possible because it's been a really good year and trying to keep that going. And so without further ado, I might as well get into Europa League, and we'll start with some early matches that kick off at 11:45 Central Time here in Dallas, Texas, or 12:45 Eastern Time. I believe that's probably in the 7 o'clock range in Europe, but time changes over there a fair amount, and I don't feel like doing any more math at this hour. So I'll start with Sporting Lisboa hosting Arsenal, currently sporting a quarter goal underdog at home. All the juice on Arsenal. Over under is 2.5. Also juice to the under. So Sporting Lisboa got through. I was a little bit down on them, to say the least, in their last round or last stage of the Europa League. And they were facing a minnow named Michelin, I believe a Danish side. And we're pretty fortunate to catch Michelin not really at their best, missing some important pieces. And there were some big mistakes from Michelin because they haven't played a bunch of matches in a long time. Sporting Lisboa, on the other hand, I think replaced their keeper between leg one and leg two after making a horrible mistake that put them in jeopardy leg one at home. Like they certainly expected to win. Now they get Arsenal, who you can certainly question what Arsenal's, I guess, going for in this competition. Certainly if you win the Europa League, you get an automatic berth to Champions League, but they don't need to be bailed out by that because they are first in the Premier League, and it looks very unlikely that anyone will catch them for the title besides Manchester City, and certainly three other teams will not pass them. So Arsenal, are they going to play the kids? Thierry Henry was speaking today on television for the Champions League coverage, as of course they always do an English slant. Blah, blah, blah. I'm not going to get into that on this episode, but he came in and said you need to play the spine and you can kind of replace this tip of the spear with maybe Nketiah or the wings or something like that. But that there should be a little bit better of a lineup out there than this line suggests. I don't think Sporting is anything close to Arsenal, I have to say. At home, I think was the only place I would want to back them, but I don't really feel like that's the place to do it in this round, in this leg. at only a quarter of a goal. Maybe when this climbs to a half a goal, I get a little bit more interested because a draw at home would set Sporting Lisboa up for a good position to go on the road to Arsenal. Honestly, might not even be a good enough position for them to be in to get through, and they probably do want to win this match and probably will put a fair amount into that. You can always question how much a Portuguese club is interested in the Europa League, but I do think that Champions League berth that's out there is huge for them, and certainly the money as you keep advancing, this competition gets bigger and bigger, and that does matter for a Liga Portugal side. But it's not a big enough spread for me right now. I think the only thing I lean right now in this matchup is the under 2.5. It's very juiced at the moment. I like it less when it falls to 2.25, which I would expect it may. But if the Arsenal lineup comes out pretty strong, maybe it even climbs the opposite direction. I think this line pretty much suggests that Arsenal's not playing their best. But we'll see what happens and when lineups come out an hour before the matches tomorrow. Union Berlin then hosts Union Saint-Gilloise. I believe they're Belgian. Union currently, I guess they're both Unions, but the Berlin version is currently a 3/4 goal favorite with all the juice. Over-unders 2.25, pretty juiced to the under. Union haven't been scoring much lately. They've been balancing this competition and the Bundesliga. Results have not been going great for them in the Bundesliga, but they're really just trying to stay in that league. Of course, they'd like to finish in first place and win a Meisterschale, but that's looking less and less likely, especially as they are really unable to score goals in Germany. The nice part is they get a little bit of class relief here with Saint-Gilloise, who I want to say these teams played in the group stages, but I feel like they wouldn't let that happen again. I mean, I'm going to look right now. I hate to do this while I'm typing it out, but I feel like they did play in the same group way back when. Let's see. So yeah, they did. And Union Saint-Gilloise lost 1-0 at home to Union Berlin, I believe on a penalty, if I remember correctly. And in the first matchup, I want to say Union won 1-0 on the road at Union Berlin. So like there's been 2 goals combined in 2 matches that were already played. I mean, these teams know each other backwards and forwards, I'm sure. It's really lame that they're playing in a knockout stage in the round of 16 after simple where they couldn't play in the first one because Union Saint-Gilloise did win the group and got a bye to this round. It's stupid and like shame on you, UEFA, for that. But I mean, if we're complaining about UEFA, it's a much longer podcast. With that said, I think that it's pretty much a no-brainer to not expect goals in this matchup. Union at home, they still want to play defensively. I don't think they really come out for anyone, similar to Tottenham Hotspur type of style, but they actually have a reason to do it because they don't have the budget that Joseph Levy does or whatever his name Levy does for Tottenham. Union Saint-Gilloise, I can't say that I follow them too closely, but I think from seeing those 2 matches finish 1-0, I don't expect goals in this one. I would expect maybe this number to tread down towards 2. So it might be one of those numbers you want to play sooner rather than later. I'll probably sleep on it, but see if it's starting to fall further and then eventually just play an Union side that seems to rotate their fullbacks, their wingers maybe, but their core is usually still there. Thierry Henry would approve. And I don't think Saint-Gilloise have a good chance of scoring really more than a single goal and probably not even scoring at all against Union. Moving on, I'll go next to Bayer Leverkusen, another German Bundesliga side, hosting Ferencváros from Budapest. Currently, Bayer Leverkusen, a 1.5 goal favorite with all the juice right now. Over under is 3, slightly juiced to the under. Leverkusen are not a defensive team at all. They play on the front foot 100%. Ferencváros are generally a pretty big underdog when I've backed them over the last few years, especially in a lot of qualifying for either the Europa League or Champions League. And they're usually pretty competitive. So Leverkusen are going to use their pace in the wings. Jeremy Frimpong did limp off this past weekend. I'm not sure his status, a hamstring. It looked like it was. And I can't imagine they would risk him for this type of competition because they're still fighting in the Bundesliga to try to get up the table. I feel like, if anything, I like under 3 in this one, but that's hard to really push forward with a Leverkusen side that doesn't really care about playing defense. As I now remember, I should probably put my stuff on Do Not Disturb. But with that said, I think From where I sit with this one, I lean to under. I think Ferencváros are going to go and try to defend against Leverkusen. The problem is Leverkusen are going to push forward the whole time, leave themselves open, which because it's going to be hard for Ferencváros, I think, to score on counterattacks consistently. To get probably more than one goal seems like a lot to ask. So if anything, surprise, surprise, but I like the under 3 and getting that full goal of insurance on 3. You can push on a 2-1, 3-0, something like that final. I think that's a really good situation. Next, we'll move to Roma hosting Real Sociedad. Currently, Roma, a quarter goal favorite. Over under is 2. Juice the under. Roma had a pretty wild line this weekend hosting Juventus. Moved from, I think, Roma as a favorite all week to then Juve as a closed a favorite. The total fell from 2 to 1 3/4, very low, but ultimately Roma got a 1-0 victory, if I'm not mistaken. So good week for them, to say the least. Real Sociedad has kind of not really had a great run of things. Where I think we're goalless on Friday, but did play on Fridays. So they have that extra day or 2 days of rest compared to Roma. I think played Sunday. That's really helpful. It's going to be tough going into Roma and trying to go get a result, but Sociedad only a quarter goal underdog with a little bit more juice right now on Roma. Over under is 2, juice to the under. I might have said that already, but forgive me, it's late. I think Real Sociedad's defense has been incredible, and their offense is just always leaving things to be desired. They decided not to start Andre Sorloth in favor of Carlos Fernandez, who just can't hit the target at this point. When he plays, he's an almost guaranteed under for me, but it doesn't necessarily feel like he's I would expect they go back to Sorloth if he's at all healthy or possible, can give him 60 minutes, maybe even a half might be enough. Mikel Oyarzabal hasn't really come back firing since his knee injury, which is pretty graphic apparently because it's taken him so long to come back. He missed the World Cup and that was not expected. But Roma are not really a great offense at this point. I feel like they've taken on the Jose Mourinho style and they played much better defensively this season. So I lean to under 2. I mean, it's probably not surprising to anybody at this point. And I do have some interest in Sociedad at that quarter of a goal, but I think I'd like much more if it climbed to a half. It's not there yet. So I'll give you Real Sociedad under 2 as my lean for that one. Moving to the late window, Shakhtar Donetsk hosting Feyenoord. Shakhtar, I don't think are still playing in the Ukraine. So ultimately they're probably playing in Polonia or Poland. And it's not really a great home field advantage. Currently, Shakhtar, a quarter goal underdog in this neutral site home type of situation. It's crazy that they're even to this round, but I'll leave that aside. Over under is 2.5, slightly juiced the over. And I don't really have a huge insight into Feyenoord, I got to say. Good for them to make it to this stage of the competition. I believe they got a bye to get here, but they, to me, have not been that impressive when I've watched them. And Shakhtar, I mean, credit them for not really playing an Ukrainian season and then still getting through to this round, I believe, in penalties against Rennes. Credit them for that. And eventually the Yellow Brick Road comes to an end at some point, but it hasn't yet. And I don't necessarily think that Feyenoord are that incredible, especially when Shakhtar Donetsk have done so well to get to this stage. I feel like Shakhtar, they want to play on the counterattack. They want to get out and try to run and use their pace as much as possible. Not having Mihailo Mudryk anymore is kind of a big deal because he really made them go and I think got them to this stage in this competition. I think they crashed out of Champions League but finished third, so they moved into the playoff round and then got through Rennes. I don't really know that I have a lean in this one, so I'll keep going. Next is Sevilla hosting Fenerbahce, Turkish side. Whereas Sevilla has been playing a lot better, though who knows if the club or side or players or roster even cares what Jorge Sampaoli does, especially when he's passing along gigantic notes on printer paper that Marcos Acuna is crumpling and throwing on the ground in the middle of the center circle. Hilarious. And ESPN here in the U.S. made a big deal about that. I'm not really sure how big of a deal it is. But anyway, Sevilla currently a 3/4 goal favorite at the Ramon Sanchez Pizjuan. Over-under is 2.5, juice to the under. Also a lot of juice on the Fenerbahce side. I think Sevilla really have transitioned under, especially when they left Julian Lopetegui, or they sacked him and let him move on to Wolves, or fired him and then eventually found that next job. Sampaoli is not a defensive manager. He plays on the front foot. I think it's taken me a while to realize that Sevilla has had such trouble scoring that it wasn't really going to be that same type of way under Sampaoli. that makes me feel like an under 2.5 is really not worth it, though I don't really see Sevilla's offense being good enough to score that much that frequently. I don't follow the Turkish league that closely, but I've been pretty disappointed in them, at least in the early group stages of these competitions in Europe or the continental competitions. So I think if anything, under 2.5 would be my lean, but I don't like it. It's super juiced right now, so I'll move on. Next, we'll go to Juventus hosting Sports Club Freiburg. As you can see, if you're watching, I do have a Freiburg kit, my first team that I became a fan of. And I don't think I'm biased, though. I've done really well betting on Freiburg and really poorly betting against them over the few years I've been doing this. But when they have a player that's basically my first name, who's a stud for them, I mean, that was a pretty easy selection in the Schwarzwald or the Black Forest. Juve currently a 3/4 goal favorite with all the juice right now. Over under is 2.25, excuse me. It's late. Juice to the under. This is a very interesting matchup. Both teams, of course, with black and white stripes. An ex-girlfriend of mine even said, why does your favorite team just copy Juve? And I was like, I don't think that was what they were going for, but it's kind of hard to argue. Juve, a 3/4 goal favorite, so they got to win this match to take at least half your money, win it in a lopsided fashion to take more of it. Freiburg have basically been a selling club in Germany, but they've outperformed expectations. You could argue that it's because the Bundesliga has been weaker than maybe it should have been. But Sport Club Freiburg have basically a great manager. They have a style, a system, which is to be really aggressive and physical. And that's been mentioned by a lot of American international players that have left the U.S. for the Bundesliga, always saying that trips to the Black Forest are always really physical and really tough. We'll see if Juventus is ready for that. I do think that they've been taking this competition seriously because of their 15-point deduction that's pending court approval or whatever. I think multiple appeals will probably happen in Serie A, but they're taking these competitions seriously. And Juve have been trying to get their squad as healthy as possible. It's not been easy. They've been missing a lot of people, a lot of minutes. But they're going to go and try to get a good result here at a big home venue, which is going to be a really tough situation for Freiburg to go into. Freiburg's offense has not been great. They've kind of been timid ever since the World Cup break, and haven't had Europe to bother them or to really distract what they've been doing so far. Goalless this weekend, I think, suggests that the defense is playing pretty well, but there's a fair amount to be desired with the offense at the moment. And I do think going on the road to Juve is going to be a tough part to hang around, and really getting a clean sheet is asking a lot for them on the road. I will say that under 2.25 does interest me quite a bit, though, because I feel like Juve, and especially under Massimiliano, whatever his name is, Allegri, that they want to play defensive football, especially if they take a lead. I think Freiburg see a 1-0 loss on the road here as not a terrible situation. They can go home, use their home crowd, and try to get a result, force extra time, and see what happens against a big club like Juventus. I mean, the spending differences are massive between these two clubs, but I think ultimately this is going to be a very competitive match, and I don't think I'm just saying that because I'm wearing a kit, but I think under 2.25 looks good to me. I'm interested to see where the money takes this one, but after seeing Roma and Juve close at 1.75, juice to the over, but still when it crosses that 2-goal under mark, I'm very interested to try to grab that before it even hits 2, which I think it might. Based on the juice right now, it looks like it's heading that direction. I don't know if we'll go that far, but certainly a number I want to grab at 2.25 before it falls to 2. Last but not least, probably the biggest names, Manchester United hosting Real Betis. Currently, Manchester United 1.25 goal favorite with most of the juice. Over unders 2.75, juice to the over. Real Betis with a pretty good competitive goalless draw at home against Real Madrid this weekend. Big match for them, and another big one coming up. Tough for them to have 2 great performances back to back. Certainly goalless wouldn't work for their fan base, but the Benito Villamarin seemed to be doing pretty well when they got a point from the defending La Liga and European champions. Manchester United, on the other hand, just got embarrassed, lost 7-0 to Liverpool. I certainly fell in the grinder with that one, lost on Manchester United plus 1/4 goal, but I guess one thing led to another, and and these losses do tend to spiral, especially when there's no aggregate involved. League matches, it seems like if you're not winning, who cares what the score is? And that's certainly going to be the excuse that Manchester United uses. I do expect Manchester United to respond to that pretty significantly after how embarrassed they were after losing 7-0. I mean, even hearing Jamie Carragher making fun of Peter Schmeichel about it on Champions League coverage and putting 7-Up cans on the TV counters and stuff like that. Like, they went all out, and I imagine we get a pretty focused and pretty diabolical effort coming in for Manchester United. But they are so bad this weekend that it's hard to really see them being confident enough to really go all out and just try to romp over Real Betis. And let's not forget that Manchester United were an underdog to Barcelona in the last round. That was a nice cash and 2 advanced number for me. But ultimately, and I think I played them in the first leg as well, a draw, and they end up winning at home in the second leg. But Real Betis, they've been competitive. Pellegrini, I think former Manchester City manager, will take this one very seriously. And Real Betis, they're not in the Copa del Rey, so this is the only other competition they're in besides La Liga. La Liga has been going fairly well for them, despite some tough results lately. And after seeing them come back from 2-0 down to Elche, the worst team in La Liga, so take it with a grain of salt. But still, I mean, they're a group of fighters. I do think they just lost Nabil Fekir, their creative number 10, which is a really big deal for them, though it certainly reduces their risk of getting a red card, as he is about as well behaved as Marilyn Manson. But I think from where I sit with this one, I mean, getting more than a goal is a lot for Real Betis to get from anybody. I think I trust them in that situation, getting over a goal. I do feel like under would correlate to it. And I don't know that I necessarily trust the Real Betis defense as much, though it's been fairly good, I think, in La Liga. And I think that what they used to be was a very offensive only team. And I think they've kind of changed that, been a lot better defensively. And we'll see what that kind of comes to, but it's a really tough situation to go into Manchester. The weather compared to from Sevilla to Manchester, considering I think it was the coldest day of the year in London today for the Tottenham match. Not a great situation for Betis to go in there, and they're going to try their best to hang around. I think if you like Betis, you probably want to play under 2 3/4. I feel like Betis is probably going to be competitive and will likely hang around here, but I don't know necessarily that I feel strongly enough right now I definitely won't play it because I expect money to come in on Manchester United, but we'll end up seeing what happens with that one. And I think it does feel a little bit obvious, but for the ultimate best bet portion of the show, at least for the Europa League, I'm gonna give you the under 2 1/4 in Union Berlin Saint-Gilloise, as I just feel like we've seen the movie twice. There hasn't been a lot of goal scoring, and I don't think there will be in this one, especially in a first leg where the road team is going to be. They won the group, so they're technically the favorite according to UEFA, but I think they're not. And they're going to go in and try to be really conservative and grind out a goalless result. So now I'm going to move to the Europa Conference League. We'll see how much I can give on some of these teams. Like, for instance, early matches, AEK Larnaca. Not sure what country they're from, Greece maybe. They're hosting West Ham. Currently, West Ham, a 1-goal favorite on the road, though Larnaca is pretty juiced. Over-unders 2 1/4. Juiced to the over as well. And I got to say, any match involving West Ham right now, I lean under. They've had a lot better scoring ability in the Conference League and won their group and were really great, but have done nothing of that in the Premier League. And they're definitely more concerned about staying in the league than winning this competition. That'd be crazy if they were in the Europa League next year, but also in the Championship. I don't think that would work very well. But I don't know about Larnaca very much, so there's not much for me to do there. Next move, Anderlecht hosting Villarreal. Currently Anderlecht a 0.5 goal underdog at home, over unders 2 1/4, juice the over. And Villarreal kind of in my face a little bit. I've been playing a lot better, getting wins that I don't necessarily think they've deserved, but they've gotten them. Late show, late goals, but they've happened. Anderlecht, honestly, a Belgian side that I thought would be a lot stronger and would perform better in Europe than they have this year. They're up to this level of the competition, so it hasn't been so bad, but I do feel like Villarreal are a much better side. Currently, Villarreal, a 0.5 goal favorite on the road. That's, I think, a La Liga team that's, I guess, been getting results lately, but I don't really believe in them. I lean under 2 1/4, if anything, but it's really hard to know if I trust the Anderlecht defense enough to play that one. Next, we'll move to Sheriff Tiraspol hosting Nice. Sheriff, a 0.5 goal underdog at home, very juiced to the Nice side, potentially climbing to 3/4. Over under is a flat 2, slightly juiced to the over. Nice have been awesome. Brought in a new manager. I've done a lot of business. Tara Mulphy joining the side, I think, shows the belief in the future. It's going to be a big test for Sheriff to hang around. I think they're going to try their best to keep this as low scoring as possible, hence the 2 total. But I think Nice can kind of blow that up and score a bunch of goals here. So I'm not really looking at much in that one. Next, we have Basel hosting Slovan Bratislava. Currently, Basel a 3/4 goal favorite. Very juiced Slovan Bratislava side, so maybe falling back down to a half. Over under is 2.5, juice to the over. And I don't have a lot to say about this one. Similar situation for Ghent hosting Istanbul to Başakşehir. Ghent from Belgium, a half a goal favorite, very juiced Başakşehir, so maybe falling to 1/4 of a goal. I doubt it. Probably going to hang around that half. Over under is 2.25. Slightly juiced the under. Next, we have Lech Poznan, a half a goal favorite to Djurgården. Over under is 2.25. And last but not least, I'll move to Fiorentina, who I do have a little bit of insight into. Fiorentina, 1.5 goal favorite to Sivasspor, Turkish, I think, champions from last season. Over under is 2.75, juiced to the under. Fiorentina are not a team I believe to score. They had a good win against Milan last weekend. Milan potentially trying to get ready for Champions League, but I think Serie A is still a priority for them. So good for Fiorentina. They've been playing better lately. I still don't believe in it. But with Nico Martinez, and if he's available, Nico Gonzalez, he's a great scorer and someone that's really scary. Sivasspor was pretty disappointing. A lot that I saw kind of speaks to my feelings on Turkish soccer so far, or Turkish football. Generally, I lean under in Fiorentina matches. I think 2.75 is gigantic for them to deal with, but at the same time, I'm not sure it's that close to playing. So for my ultimate best bet in that selection, I'm going to give West Ham under 2.25. I think on the road, they're going to play probably a little bit more open than you see them in the Premier League, but they're still not a great goal scoring side. And I think Larnaca is going to do their best to give West Ham the ball and say, do what you can with us. We're going to try to get a counter-attacking set-piece goal and see if we can escape with a 1-1 draw, a 1-0 win, or goalless probably works for them completely. And they go try to figure out what to do in the second leg. So that's going to, I guess, wrap up the each of the 2 leagues to talk about. It's about to be midnight here. I meant to go to sleep by now, but anyway, here we go. In terms of, I guess it's time for, let's see if there's anything else I want to talk about. So I mentioned the Patreon earlier, especially now that we're getting the ultimate best bet portion of the show. Please look on there if that interests you, if you want to get a little bit more interested in kind of what I'm doing every night. It's a good way to save some money versus alternative areas to get my picks. I think it would behoove, I think, a lot of people to get kind of what I'm looking at. So especially because things do change day to day, lineups change, and they affect things quite a bit. But we made it to this part of the show. This is Betting the Pitch, episode number 175 with the _G Warner. Check the Sport Club Freiburg shirt. We're going to knock out Juventus, but they're not one of my ultimate best bet selections. The 2 are Union Berlin hosting Union Saint-Gilloise. Anyway, I like under 2.25 in that one, as well as West Ham under 2.25 in the Europa Conference League, visiting Larnaca. My best bet for this episode, ultimate best bet, is going to be the Union Berlin under 2.25. These 2 sides played in the same group in Europa League qualifying for this stage of the competition. Both were 1-0 results to the road team, surprisingly, but I don't see much difference here. I think Union Berlin are still going to play defensively at home and want to counterattack. Their visitor, Saint-Gilloise, is going to do the exact same thing. I think it's going to be another 1-0 or even goalless type of situation here, but 1-1 also pays you. So play under 2.25 in the Football Club Union Berlin matchup for this week's Conference League or Europa League. And that'll do it for this episode. As everyone can tell, it's getting late, but thanks for joining. As always, look out for potentially joining the Patreon subscription. I think that'd be worth a lot of your situations. Of course, look out for college basketball stuff. Get Selection Sunday coming on Sunday, hence the name, but also plenty of other conference tournament plays coming in through this week. Try to get those out overnight so everyone has them in their pocket and decide if they want to play the stock market or grab things right away. Thanks for the support. As always, please, if you're on YouTube, hit subscribe. If you're on Apple Podcasts or Spotify, please leave a 5-star review. If you're on Twitter, the _G Warner, hit that follow button. Send me something in the DMs or at me, and I'll reply. We'll see you there soon, and good luck.